Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Airlift wireless air compressor for rear air helper bags on a 2024 Ford F-350. Now this is going to be a dual path system, meaning that you're going to have individual control for each bag. So you should set your airbags up with that dual path system and manual fills before getting this installed, but this will work on really any brand of airbags that you may already have. And the pros of this is if you've had that manual fill for a while, it's great. You can adjust the pressure, but that does mean having to have an air tank with you or stopping somewhere that has it to be able to change those. Whereas having a remote means that you can do it from the comfort of your cab on the fly. So if it's raining out or whatever it may be, you'll be able to adjust this super easily. You also have presets, so you can have multiple different loads and get these dialed in. Digital readouts, super easy to use. Really just up and down for the air pressure that you want, and then you click left or right for either bag, and then you have your presets. Now, compressor is rather small, but it moves pretty quick as far as air pressure, so you're really not waiting around too much. And with that, not only do you have a remote that you can charge and keep in the cab with a nice display, but if you were to let the kids play with this and they lose it or the battery dies, you can use an app on your phone to still be able to control this. So really, if you already have bags, this is just making it that much better, easier. And for something like this, we have torque lift tie downs up on our truck. It's going to be for an in-bed camper. So airbags make a lot of sense. It's a lot of weight in the bed. And if you have different weights, having that dual pass system is really nice. When it comes to the installation, none of it's terribly hard. The hardest part is going to be mounting up the compressor and the manifold on the side of the frame rail. So drilling through that can be a little bit tricky at times. If you did the airbags yourself, this is a cakewalk. It's pretty simple. Once you have these mounted up, you're going to have the air lines running back that you tee into those lines already, and then a harness that goes up, attaches to power, and that's pretty much it. Now, if you had your airbags installed by someone else, that's totally fine. You probably love them, and if you want a compressor, if you're not wanting to do the install yourself, you can reach out and find someone close to you by using our dealer locator. That way you can get the compressor installed and be back on the road. If you're doing this yourself, follow along. This isn't that hard to do, and it's really cool. It changes the whole dynamic of your truck by being able to really adjust that while driving. It's one of those features that once you put it on, you're going to be really happy with it. So let's take a look at that installation. I'll walk you through it. Make sure you get this compressor installed. Now, if you've done the airbag installation on your own and you're doing the compressor yourself, I'm here to tell you this isn't much harder, or actually it might even be easier than the airbags. But dealing with the airlines is going to be something, if you did the airbags yourself, you're going to be used to it. It really comes down to getting this installed is just laying everything out properly and then making connections. So taking a look at some of the components. Obviously, an air compressor is going to compress the air, and that way we can send it to the bags on demand. So you'll see a barbed fitting. This is going to be where the air comes into the compressor, and that's where our filter comes into play. This is going to mount normally somewhere up in this area. Really try to find a place where water won't get to it. So tuck it up as high as you can. You can zip tie it or find an opening in there to pop this in place. This is going to have a threaded barb fitting. Doesn't need any thread lock or anything like that. You'll just tighten that down, and we'll connect a small airline tube from this barb fitting to this barb fitting, so that way we can get our air. Now, off of our compressor, we have a push connect fitting, and this is going to be where the air comes out, compressed air will, and that's going to feed into our brains of the operation. So this is where we get our Bluetooth function, and it's going to go from one valve to two, so we have that individual control. You'll notice 1 and 2, there's numbers on there, so that's going to get important when we start to get these tapped into our bags, because this is going to be a dual path system, so you'll have individual control. So just a small air fitting will connect these two, and then we'll have our other lines running back where we're going to be using T's to tie into that airline. We do have a harness. It is all taped up, makes it nice and easy. This will plug into the brains of the operation that we have here, and then we have 2 wires. These are going to attach to the wires that we have here. So overall, that's really it. The end of our harness is going to tap into power and a ground, and then there's a pink wire that you can use as a trigger from your ignition sometimes you really don't need to use it. That's what I've found in many cases. So with that being said, we are going to be running this up into the engine bay, but most of this work is going to be done on the passenger side of the truck along the frame rail, because that's where we're going to be mounting everything up. So really it's going to be self-tapping screws on our compressor that we have, as well as our main unit here. So I'm going to get this kind of lined up, kind of mounted up, and then I'll show you the connections between it. But other than that, this is a really easy installation, and it is really nice to be able to get this to be able to control the bags from the push of a button, which is going to be nice. No more compressor and having to fill up at a gas station or use your own air. You can just simply press this and you'll get those dialed in pressures. So as I mentioned, I'll get this all mounted up, we'll get the connections, and we'll have this installed in no time. So getting these mounted, it's kind of tricky sometimes because you're drilling through the frame of a vehicle with self-tapping screws. So I recommend using a pilot bit, and I used a punch just to kind of make some divots for us to get that started. If I was to do it all over again, find a spot that's not right behind our side steps here and make it a little bit easier for you. But as far as where you mount it, really anywhere on the frame rail, I try to go up a little bit higher, but you are still going to have to make connections, so just kind of keep that in mind. So we have our compressor mounted up, and then I did our manifold back here. Now it's important to check to make sure that you have this in the proper orientation. The manifold does need to have the logo facing the normal way. You don't want it backwards. And then from here, I also put the filter that we have in place. So I use the shorter tube. It's a slightly different texture than the longer run of airline tube. And I just ran that up, and there's a spot from the factory that I was able to snap that into place. And I didn't cut any of the airline tube. I just simply coiled it around so you can see all that bundle here. And that adds as a good moisture catch. So basically if it pulls in any water, it's going to at least have that at the bottom of that line and not going into the compressor. Now with those mounted up, before we get into our electrical harness, I'm going to get our air connections dialed in. So when it comes to mounting the manifold, make sure it's within 16 inches of the compressor. We do have this hose with that quick connect fitting, and this is going to go into the quick connect fitting that we have on our manifold. So ours is going to look like this pretty much, and I have two holes in the frame. I'm going to use that to kind of zip tie that up so it's not flapping around as you go down the road. And as far as the connection, I'm going to be using our airline tube. And if you did your airbags, you probably saw in the instructions that you want to use tubing cutters. It's going to get a nice clean square cut. Chances of it having a leak generally come down to the fact that it's not a very square clean cut, and that's where that airline can leak. So using a tubing cutter is a really good way to make sure you get that. So we'll just push this in to one side, make sure it's locked in, and then I'll get this other side mounted up. I'm going to cut off a little section here and press that in. Now we'll grab the rest of our airline tube, and we're going to be going from our manifold back to the bags where we're going to tee into those lines. So you should already have a manual fill valve on the back with the Schraders, and if you're doing this at the same time as your airbags, you still want that, because in case the compressor wasn't work, you can still manually fill them. So what we'll be doing is running two lines. There's the two push connects on the back side here. That's why I wanted to do the airlines now. It'll be out of the way of the harness that we have. And those numbers that I mentioned earlier, the 1 and the 2, it is going to be side specific. So number 1 is going to go to the left side or the driver's side. Number 2 will be the passenger. So as you route this over to those bags, just make sure you keep those in check, maybe do one at a time. But the main goal is running this back, making sure that we don't hit anything that's moving, hot, or that can chafe it. And then when we get back to the airbag line, we'll be using our T-connect fittings to just get it all snapped in. So I'll run this and then show you how it looks. So I got my airlines hooked up, so I have both of them kind of running out here. I zip tied it up to the other zip tie that I put our main line in, just to kind of keep it clean. Normally you're going to have some wire loom or harnesses on the frame rail, which you can zip tie to. It's not the case on this one. So I just kind of loop this back, and then there's a lot of exhaust going on here, so we want to make sure that we're not going to be, getting that line on heat and damaging it. So let's head underneath and then I'll show you the rest of the path. So starting with manifold number 1, or the driver's side, I looped this back and just went over all the cross members that we have in our frame. From this side, I did route it over this one just to keep it away from that muffler, and then looped it over. And there's a bunch of spots that you can hook it up to as far as zip ties. So just make sure that, again, as you're going down the road, it's not going to make contact with any of that exhaust. And then before making my way over here, I cut the factory loop that I made previous when I did the airbag install, and then just cut that, put the T-fitting in, and then attached our regular line to it. So it's pretty simple overall. So this is going to make it to where it's going to go directly into the bag when we call for it to be filled, and then we have our existing Schrader valve manual fill that's running back. On the passenger side, pretty easy. I just continued routing along the frame rail. You can see here I kind of worried a little bit of being close to the exhaust, but there is a heat shield here, and I used the holes in the frame to zip tie to keep it nice and tight so it's not going to make contact with our shock, and then I tapped it in to our factory line. With the air lines all hooked up, now it's time to do the electrical. It's actually really easy to do. This whole harness is going to run up to the battery. So the first thing we'll do is grab our plug, put this on the manifold, and get it snapped in. And you should hear it snap. I kind of had to push it a little bit extra. And then the white tab, push that in. That's going to lock it in place. And the rest of this is going to run up to the engine bay, but you're going to see that you have a black and a red that splits off pretty close to the plug. That is going to go to our wires that we have on our compressor. So the interesting part is they put a spade connector and a ring terminal. Ring terminal is great because of that ground, but we do need to tap into these. So I'm going to end up cutting these off anyway. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to get this all attached, and then I'll show you how it looks. Now the rest of the harness is going to run up to the engine bay, but you'll probably notice that there's a red and black wire that runs off of it close to the plug. This is going to tap into our red and black wires that we have on our compressor, and they have a spade connector and a ring terminal, I think for different applications, but what we're going to do is cut those ends off. We'll strip all the ends back, and then we're going to be using our yellow butt connectors. Now these are heat shrink butt connectors, so once we crimp it, we're going to take some heat to it, and that's going to seal up, making sure that it's a nice watertight seal long term. For something that lives on the frame or underneath the truck, you want to make sure that long term those connections are going to stay solid. So I'm going to cut these ends off, again, strip it, and then we'll get our butt connectors put on. Now I made my connections, and I used just some wire loom to clean it up. You know, having the wires that have bright colors to them, I don't want anyone to see that. Just for my own personal sake, I think it looks a lot cleaner. So a little wire loom goes a long way to do that. I left zip ties on here. I'll go back and trim them, but that way you can see kind of the path that I took. So the rest of our harness, this just passes down the frame rail, and I zip tied it up, again, using some of the holes in the frame just to keep that up. And then once you kind of get to the front, you're going to go above the body mount, and then your fender liner is pretty open. You can see the engine bay through there. So I just pulled mine up and making sure that I'm staying away from anything hot or moving. And then as I pulled it up, I found a mount to zip tie that to where we can start making the connections to our 12-volt power. So you can see where I ran my power wire up and where I zip tied it. You're going to have quite a bit of excess of harness, and that's totally fine. But before we cut any excess off, we're going to start making sure that it's going to look clean long term. And the way that we're going to do that is grab our fuse holder. We're going to want to attach this to our positive. And so you can see it's a loop. We'll just simply cut down the center, and we're going to strip back both sides. Now on one side, we're going to be putting a ring terminal. And you can crimp this down, and we're going to attach this to the positive right now. So just make sure that it's crimped on. You'll see that I don't have my fuse in, and that's the way that we want it, because once we put that fuse in, it's going to power it, and we're going to want to be at a state where we can pair the controller at the same time. So we'll take back our cap here, and I'm going to take off this 10mm nut. I'll feed my ring terminal through the rubber so it looks nice and clean, and then tighten it back down. So now I'm going to cut the excess off of our wire, and we know that we have at least this length, so I want to make sure that we can connect it but also not have too much coiled around. And so as I cut this, we're going to be stripping back the red and the black, and the pink is going to be a trigger wire. So if you want to, you can run this to a fuse panel that makes it to where it only comes on when you have the ignition. You don't have to hook this up. So in fact, what we're going to do today is I'm just going to tape this back, and we're not going to be using that. So at this point, what I need to do is take the red wire, a butt connector, heat shrink, and we'll get our fuse holder attached. Now this one's not included in the kit. I had to source this of my own just because I used some of the other ones, so it may look a little different. I'll get this crimped, and then the black wire will need to go to the negative. I'm going to use the negative on the battery since we're here. We know it's a good ground, and so we'll get our ring terminal attached. And I'll be attaching it to the negative on our battery. So once that's attached, we get our butt connector shrunk down and tape up our pink wire. I'm going to get some wire loom, clean this all up, and then grab your controller and your fuse because we're going to get ready to get this paired up. Now I got everything attached. We can grab our fuse and we'll put it in the fuse holder. That's going to give everything power. And when you plug it in, you should hear that compressor potentially starting to cycle. And now we can grab the battery and get our controller set up. Now sometimes it doesn't pair immediately and you'll have to redo the pairing process, but it's going to come up with WirelessAIR and then a number which is going to correspond to it. So I'm just going to click the center button. It'll say connecting, pairing successful. If it's unsuccessful, pull the fuse out, give it 10 seconds to reset itself, and then try again. Now, the interesting part with having a compressor, which is really nice if you've gone from manual fill, is you always need to keep at least 5 psi in the bags to hold the body. That way it's going to be supported, and that's going to happen with a compressor like this. It's always going to keep it at 5 psi, and then when you're ready to raise it up, it's just simply going to be pushing this to where you want it. So now this truck, he has torque lift mounts set up, so he's going to have an in-bed camper, and that's a really great use for airbags because you're going to vary that load when you have the camper in or not. But also when you go to camp and you want to level everything out, having a dual path is really nice because if you have more weight to one side or the other while you're driving, you can alter that. But if you also need to level it all out when you get to the campsite, you can do that with your airbags. So pretty simple operation. It's going to go up to 35. That's where I set it to. You can see it's going to both sides, but if I wanted to say, let's go to 45 on the right, I'll just click the right button, adjust this up, give it a second, and it's going to start filling it. Now, that's something to be said too, because once you get it dialed in and you're really happy with it, you can set your presets, and that way I have no camper in truck, normal driving, camper in bed, or if you're even towing a trailer, you could have all the different presets, and it's going to make it nice and easy every time you hop in the truck. And that was a look and installation of the Airlift Wireless Air Compressor on a 2024 Ford F-350.